The first award tonight goes to an innovator. It's the Arthur C. Clarke Innovator Award. The citation on the certificate, or on the award rather, reads, "For enhancing the public's insight into American democracy." For those of you that live and work in Washington, there's a little quote that the Washington Post puts on its paper called "Democracy Dies in Darkness." The person we're honoring here tonight has done a great deal to make a really big difference in the transparency and visibility we have in what goes on. By way of a Sir Arthur quote, given his sphere of interest, we couldn't find one that was quite as full of science fiction, but he did say, "Sometimes when I'm in a bookstore or library, I'm overwhelmed by all the things that I do not know. Then I'm seized by a powerful desire to read all the books one by one." So I think while C-SPAN, the creation of Brian Lamb, is not a bookstore, it, in some respects, has everything a bookstore would have, or a library. I would like to introduce Rob Kennedy. Rob was named as C-SPAN's president and co-CEO in April of 2012, a position he shares with his colleague, Susan Swain. Together, they are responsible for strategy and operations at the nation's only public affairs cable television network. Prior to that, he served as C-SPAN's president and co-chief operating officer, and has been C-SPAN's top financial officer since 1987. Rob, if you'll join me here on the stage. Rob will be introducing Brian, someone he is obviously known for a very long time in a very special way.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Walda. It's an honor to introduce this awardee. It also carries some risk because he's my boss. So I brought a script. Brian's actually been called many things. Some of my favorites: National Treasure, Video Buddha. But I call him boss and I call him Hoosier. But there's also another word that I use to describe him: hacker. Not the hoodie-wearing type that breaks into computer systems. I don't think Brian probably even owns a hoodie. I've actually never seen him in short sleeves. No, I'm referring to the good definition of hacker, and that's using technology to find a novel solution to a seemingly intractable problem. Our story begins in Lafayette, Indiana in the 1950s. We see 9-year-old Brian sneaking, can't believe he ever snuck anything at any time, but sneaking a homemade crystal radio set into his bedroom at night so he could tune in the radio stations from Chicago. See, Brian has always been thirsty for information, and he learned to use technology to transcend the boundaries of his hometown and satisfy his thirst for knowledge. When he left Lafayette, he served in the Navy and then worked as a press aide in the Pentagon during Vietnam. It was here that Brian saw firsthand the network news filter, that the 30-minute newscasts of the time only showed a portion of what was going on in Washington. And he wondered, how could people in Indiana and across America see more of what was going on in Washington? But just like computer hackers, Brian first had to learn about and master the tools he would use to solve this problem. His next stop, the White House Office of Telecommunications Policy. In the 1970s, the OTP was led by Clay Whitehead, and it was at the epicenter of all the telecom policy debates of the time, including open skies, the potential commercial use of communication satellites. Now, Brian's not a techie by nature, but I think he'd agree. But OTP served as a crash course for him in all of the emerging technologies of the time. especially geosynchronous satellites. Next, Brian signed on as a trade reporter covering the fledgling cable television industry. The industry was growing and launching new channels. Brian had his aha moment. Could a new cable channel be developed to provide a more complete view of Washington? There were a couple of fits and starts along the way, but a few years later, the House of Representatives presented the catalyst for Brian's idea. The House decided to put cameras in the chamber and go on television. Brian seized the moment. Working with cable industry leaders, C-SPAN launched as a nonprofit in 1979. C-SPAN was the 6th satellite network to launch, before CNN, by the way. We love to say that. Programming began with the House. Other Washington events followed. The Senate was added in 1986, all broadcast from beginning to end. Brian had hacked the network news filter. Today, the hack is pretty much still in place. We now have 3 channels. We have a robust website. We're still provided as a public service by the cable and satellite distributors who carry our channels. All so that 9-year-olds in Indiana, and all of us, have a front row seat to our government in action. So whether you call him hacker or social entrepreneur or just Hoosier, I submit that he's a fitting recipient of the Arthur C. Clarke Foundation Innovation Award. Ladies and gentlemen, Brian Lamb.
I get to give Brian his award because I've known him a long time. And I know how worthy he is, personally know how worthy he is. So I'm happy, Brian, to present you with the Sir Arthur Clarke Innovators Award for enhancing the public's insights into American democracy.
Thank you, Walter.
Let's move over here. Hold on, right here, there's Clark.
Oh, my goodness.